We start with the sombre news, of course, that Sir Bobby Charlton passed away over the weekend, diagnosed with dementia back in 2020. He died peacefully with his family with him, of course. But English football, and dare I even say world football, has lost an absolute legend of the game, Pete Donaldson.
Yeah, I mean, you look at players like Paul Scholes and you know, people are celebrated as being Premier League greats. It's only because Charlton played like he did from attacking midfield or midfield. I mean, it's rare in this game personally to see a statesman of the game spend so much time at the top of it, affecting so much of it, and he knew to be the quiet. Like sometimes it's better to be a quiet person. Sometimes in the game, I think there's so many stars in our global game that kind of sully their legacy with silly nonsense. But he was just so kind of well put together and polite. And sometimes quite shy as well, and I think he sort of and that was such a strength of his personality. So it's a really sad. It's been a really sad weekend for a lot of people who love football, and we can't forget that players like Charlton, you know, your Nobby Stiles, Dennis Law. It shouldn't be forgotten what they gave to football and what it took away from their family in their later years because of the things that it did to their brains in the end. So it's a sad day for football, but it's great that we can celebrate him.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think you make a good point there that yes, some former players, you know, what they perhaps go on to do if they get involved with
Keegan
FIFA.
a few weeks ago.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? It's the quiet dignity thing about him. I remember because none of us are old enough to remember him as a player. We see the clips, of course, and we hear the stories. And Andy and I were fortunate enough to be able to touch on this a little bit on Saturday on Ramble Reacts. But it's the way he seemed to just gently go through life and carry himself with this, like I say, publicly at least, with this quiet dignity.
And he was still involved in football. Yeah. That's the thing. It's not like and of course, if he did that, fair enough. But if he went off and retired and we didn't hear too much from him and he attended the odd game here and there, he was still actively involved. And yet, as you say, carried himself with dignity, which sadly, not a lot of people don't often do in football.
Absolutely. And I said to Andy at the weekend, the thing that's crazy about him as a player is that, of course, he goes through this incredibly tough, to say the least, difficulty and tragedy in the Munich air disaster, and then slowly pieces his life back together, rebuilds it, and is able to carry on as a player. But when you watch a clip of him and the way he strikes the ball, and you just know the pitch, as I said to Andy, the pitch is a mud pile. Yeah, the ball is a rock. Yeah, you know,
and the boots
are probably hobnail boots, like really heavy leather boots. Just the technique on him, it's just incredible. What a player, you know, and to get that many England caps, to win that many trophies, to be in the apex of England winning the World Cup in '66, just incredible life and incredible career, and means a lot to Man United fans as well, Vish, obviously, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that would have become apparent over the weekend in the tributes, I suppose, is that, you know, we joke about the whole "this is Manchester United," you know, this is Manchester United Football Club. That's kind of that's basically because of Bobby Charlton. When you think of
the foundations kind of thing.
Yeah, when you think of that, you know, the Trinity that have the statue outside of Old Trafford, it's Best, Law, and it's Charlton. And he was, I think, one of the things that United fans would always see with him was, I suppose, the thread of like the Busby Babes through Ferguson to kind of present day. It was preserved by people like Bobby Charlton, who's kept on ambassadorial roles, and also you would have seen in the tributes a number of players, let's say from the class of '92, David Beckham, posted a photo on Instagram of Charlton being there when he signed for the club. You know, that was. But you know, you talked about the quiet dignity. He was someone who was very much behind the scenes, almost basically, you know, trying to help carry that message forward. And
there was a comfort there as well. I think if you're someone like David Beckham, a young lad signing for the club, and Bobby Charlton's there, or Sir Bobby Charlton. In my mind, that would just be like, oh, I think it's going to be okay. This is good.
I suppose so. Yeah, but it kind of speaks to, without really getting into, you know, current day United. It speaks to a club that was a family, really. A club that really brought people through and cared for them after and looked after them in different ways. And I suppose it helps when you're someone of Bobby Charlton's talents as well, that you're always going to be someone who remains prominent around a team like Manchester United, around a club like Manchester United, because of the success he garnered there. I did think it was interesting when you kind of step away from football and you read a bit more about what Bobby Charlton meant to the rest of the world, because you kind of think of football back then as maybe a bit closed off just because of the nature of travel, the way news would travel around the world and things like that. But back in the day, if when you went overseas as an Englishman, as someone from the British Isles, and you met someone who was asking you where you were from, and if you happened to be from England, their thing would be, oh, Bobby Charlton. Yeah. Much in the same way that, like, maybe when we went abroad, it would be like, oh, David Beckham, Wayne Rooney, Harry Kane, that kind of stuff. So that was how revered he was globally.
We should also add that it's reasonable to suggest that he's the greatest England player ever. I mean, he's 49 goals from midfield. Game was different then. It's very hard to compare eras, but 49 goals from midfield, I know that's been surpassed.
Well, there was no games like Andorra and San Marino
exactly.
as well.
Yes, it's not been surpassed by a midfield player since then. And he won the World Cup, and in that year he was voted the best player in the world. So I mean, really, no one who's played for England before or since has done what he's done in as a full package. Yeah. So I think he can help. Not that he would probably necessarily care too much for these kind of conversations, but he can legitimately have claim to be the best England player of all time.
He played for like 10 years after he left England as well. Like he played for different clubs in like Ireland and Australia and stuff like that.
Just loved the game, didn't he? And it was only until the last England game at Wembley when England beat Italy that Harry Kane had taken over Charlton's record of scoring the most goals in Wembley for England or something.
Right. Okay.
Again, that just shows you what the man achieved. So it's a great loss for football, of course.
One of the grandfathers of the game.
Yeah, exactly,
that feels similar to when Sir Bobby Robson passed away. Great grandfather of the game.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And that hair as well. Iconic. You don't see it anymore.
You're on your way.
I'm on my way. Yeah.
But you have been saying that for about 14 years.
And to be fair, when Bobby Charlton had that hair, he was about 25.
Yeah, great comb over.
Yeah.
What a man.
It's actually known as the Bobby Charlton now.
That's right. Yeah.
Touching sentiments of the guy as well.
Absolutely.
Cheers for watching another fantastic clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Make sure you click like on this video and subscribe to the channel, which means you will not miss a single upload.